In the company meeting, my manager stood up and said, "I designed this project." While everyone in the 300-person auditorium was applauding, I opened an audio recording on my phone. The voice coming through the speakers was him saying, "3 months ago, this project is impossible. Who would think of something so ridiculous?" The silence in the auditorium was the beginning of my revenge. My name is Alexander Hayes, 34 years old, senior software architect at Pinnacle Technologies in Denver, Colorado. For 8 years, I had been the invisible backbone of our product development team, the guy who solved impossible problems while others took credit for the easy wins. I should have seen the warning signs with my new manager, but sometimes you don't realize you are being hunted until the trap is already closing around you. Harrison Blake became our department manager 6 months ago, arriving from a competitor with an impressive resume and an even more impressive ego. From day one, he made it clear that he considered most of us outdated, especially those of us who had been with the company longer than his tenure in management. During our first team meeting, he looked directly at me and said, "Experience is valuable, but fresh thinking is what drives innovation. Sometimes we need to let go of old approaches." I had been working on something revolutionary for months before Harrison arrived. The project was called Dynamic Resource Optimization Protocol, a system that could predict and automatically allocate computing resources across multiple servers, potentially saving companies millions in infrastructure costs. It was complex, technically challenging, and according to every expert I had consulted, years ahead of anything currently available in the market. The idea came to me during a particularly frustrating weekend when our main server crashed and I spent 18 hours manually redistributing the workload. There had to be a better way, something that could learn patterns and make decisions without human intervention. I started developing the concept on my own time, using my personal equipment, documenting every breakthrough and setback in detailed notes. When Harrison arrived, I was excited to share the project with fresh eyes. I prepared a comprehensive presentation, complete with technical specifications, market analysis, and implementation timelines. The meeting was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in his office, just the two of us. I remember walking in with my laptop, confident that this could be the breakthrough our department needed. Harrison listened politely as I explained the concept, occasionally nodding, but maintaining an expression that seemed almost bored. When I finished, he leaned back in his chair and said, "Alexander, I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this seems incredibly ambitious, maybe unrealistic. Our clients expect proven solutions, not experimental fantasies." He paused, then added with a slight smile, "Besides, artificial intelligence resource management, that sounds like something from a science fiction movie." I tried to explain that the technology already existed in simpler forms, that we would just be combining existing algorithms in a new way. Harrison held up his hand. "Look, I do not want to discourage creativity, but we have quarterly targets to meet. Why do not you focus on the maintenance updates for the existing systems? That is where your experience would be most valuable." I left his office feeling deflated, but not defeated. Harrison was new. He did not understand the technical possibilities yet. I decided to continue developing the project on my own, gathering more evidence, building working prototypes. Maybe once I had concrete results, he would see the potential. Over the next 3 months, I worked nights and weekends, turning my basement into a development laboratory. I invested my own money in hardware, testing different configurations, documenting every failure and success. My wife, Sarah, initially supported the project, but grew concerned as I became increasingly obsessed. Alexander, you're working yourself to exhaustion for a company that does not seem to appreciate you, she said one evening as I headed downstairs for another late-night coding session. She was right, but I could not let go. This project could change everything, not just for our company, but for the entire industry. I reached out to former colleagues, academic contacts, even paid for consultations with independent experts. Everyone confirmed what I already knew. The concept was sound, the market was ready, and the potential return on investment was enormous. During this period, Harrison began scheduling regular one-on-one meetings with me, ostensibly to discuss my progress on the maintenance projects he had assigned. But these meetings felt different, more like interrogations than progress reviews. He would ask detailed questions about what I was working on, what problems I was solving, what new approaches I was considering. I want to make sure you are not overextending yourself, he would say with apparent concern. Sometimes talented people like you try to solve every problem at once. It is better to focus on achievable goals. I began to suspect that Harrison was fishing for information, so I started being more cautious about what I shared. When he asked about my evening work, I mentioned generic professional development and online courses. When he inquired about technical challenges, I described routine maintenance issues rather than the breakthroughs I was achieving with the dynamic resource optimization protocol. But Harrison was persistent. He started dropping by my cubicle unexpectedly, claiming he was just checking in, but clearly scanning my monitors and notes. One afternoon, I caught him photographing documents on my desk with his phone when he thought I was in the restroom. When I returned early, he quickly pretended to be checking his messages. That night, I made a decision that would prove crucial later. I started recording our conversations. It began as a simple precaution. I bought a small digital recorder and began keeping it in my shirt pocket during meetings with Harrison. Initially, I told myself it was just to have accurate records of project assignments and deadlines. But as Harrison's behavior became more suspicious, I realized I was documenting something much more significant. The breakthrough came on a Thursday afternoon in November. Harrison called me into his office for what he described as a brainstorming session. "Alexander," he began, "I have been thinking about our department's direction for next year. We need something innovative, something that will really impress the executive team. Do you have any ideas?" I chose my words carefully. "Well, I have been exploring some concepts around automated resource management. Nothing concrete yet, just theoretical frameworks." Harrison leaned forward, suddenly much more interested. "Tell me more about that. What kind of automation? How would it work?" Against my better judgment, I provided a high-level overview of my project, careful not to reveal the specific technical details or the extent of my progress. Harrison listened intently, taking notes, asking pointed questions about implementation challenges and market applications. At the end of our conversation, he said something that chilled me. "This is exactly the kind of thinking we need. You know what? Let me take this concept and see if I can develop it into something presentable for the leadership team. You focus on your maintenance work, and I will handle the strategic development." I nodded and smiled, but inside I felt like I was watching a theft in progress. That evening, I sat in my car in the company parking lot, listening to the recording of our conversation. Harrison's words were clear and unambiguous. He intended to take my concept and present it as his own work. But I had something he did not know about: months of documented development, detailed technical specifications and working prototypes that proved the concept's viability. I spent the weekend developing a strategy. If Harrison wanted to steal my project, I would let him, but on my terms. I created two versions of the technical documentation: a simplified version that outlined the basic concept but omitted crucial implementation details, and the complete version that included everything necessary to actually build the system. Monday morning, I requested a meeting with Harrison. I have been thinking about our conversation on Thursday, I told him. You are right that this resource management concept needs strategic development. I have put together some preliminary documentation that might help. I handed him a folder containing the simplified version of my project. Harrison's eyes lit up as he reviewed the materials. This is excellent work, Alexander. Very promising. I think I can take this and really develop it into something special. I am glad you think so, I replied. I look forward to seeing how you develop the concept. Over the next several weeks, I watched Harrison dive into what he believed was cutting-edge development work. He scheduled meetings with technical consultants, presented preliminary concepts to other department managers, and began positioning himself as an innovation leader within the company. He even started dropping hints about the groundbreaking project he was developing. Meanwhile, I continued my real work in secret. I refined the algorithms, optimized the code, and began preparing a complete working demonstration. I also did something else. I started building a comprehensive record of Harrison's theft. Every email he sent about his project was forwarded to a secure personal account. Every meeting where he discussed the concept was recorded when possible. I documented his conversations with other employees, his presentations to management, and his increasingly confident claims about his innovative thinking. The turning point came in January when Harrison scheduled a presentation to the executive leadership team. The meeting was set for a Friday afternoon in the main conference room, with all department heads and senior executives in attendance. Harrison had been preparing for weeks, clearly seeing this as his moment to shine. 2 days before the presentation, he stopped by my desk with an unusual request. Alexander, I need you to help me with some technical details for the leadership presentation. There are a few implementation questions I want to make sure I get right. I agreed to help, knowing that this would be my opportunity to set the final trap. During our preparation session, I asked Harrison to walk me through his understanding of the project. As he spoke, it became clear that he had only a surface-level grasp of the concepts. He could explain what the system would do, but he had no real understanding of how it would work. Harrison, I said carefully, there is one aspect of the implementation that I think might come up in questions. The dynamic allocation algorithms require some pretty sophisticated machine learning frameworks. Are you comfortable explaining the technical architecture? Harrison paused, clearly uncomfortable. Well, the technical details are not really the focus of this presentation. This is more about the strategic vision and market potential. I nodded. Of course. But you know how the executive team is. They always want to understand the feasibility. Maybe I should attend the meeting, just in case there are technical questions you need support with. Harrison considered this for a moment, then shook his head. No, I think I can handle it. This needs to be presented as a coherent vision from department leadership. That night, I made my final preparations. Friday afternoon arrived with unseasonable warmth for January in Denver. I spent the morning completing routine maintenance tasks, occasionally checking the time and thinking about what was about to unfold in the executive conference room. Harrison had been visibly nervous all week, rehearsing his presentation and making last-minute adjustments to his slides. At 2 o'clock, I received a message from our company's Chief Technology Officer, Janet Morrison, asking me to join the presentation as technical support. Apparently, Harrison had reconsidered his decision to present alone. When I arrived at the conference room, 15 senior executives were seated around the polished oak table, including the Chief Executive Officer, Thomas Bradshaw, and the entire leadership team. Harrison stood at the front of the room, professional and confident in his tailored suit. His presentation slides were displayed on the large monitor, featuring clean graphics and impressive market projections. He began with an overview of current industry challenges, then smoothly transitioned into his proposed solution. "Ladies and gentlemen," Harrison said, his voice carrying across the room, "I want to present a revolutionary approach to computing resource management that could transform how our clients handle their infrastructure needs. This system, which I call Dynamic Resource Optimization Protocol, represents months of innovative thinking and strategic development." I sat quietly in the back corner, my phone discreetly positioned on the table in front of me. Harrison continued his presentation, explaining the market opportunity, the competitive advantages, and the potential revenue implications. His delivery was polished and persuasive. The executives asked detailed questions about implementation timelines, development costs, and client applications. For 45 minutes, Harrison fielded questions with growing confidence. He discussed patent opportunities, licensing strategies, and partnership possibilities. Chief Executive Officer Bradshaw seemed particularly impressed, nodding approvingly and taking notes throughout the presentation. Then Harrison reached his conclusion. "This project represents the kind of innovative thinking that will keep our company ahead of the competition," he said, looking directly at the leadership team. "I designed this system to address real problems our clients face every day, and I believe it will become a cornerstone of our product portfolio for years to come." The room erupted in applause. Executives smiled and exchanged impressed glances. Chief Technology Officer Morrison stood up to shake Harrison's hand, saying, "This is exactly the kind of forward-thinking project we need to be pursuing. Congratulations on developing such an innovative solution." Harrison beamed with pride and satisfaction. This was his moment of triumph, the validation he had been seeking since joining the company. He had successfully convinced the entire leadership team that he was a visionary innovator, deserving of recognition and promotion. That was when I activated the audio recording on my phone. The speakers around the conference room suddenly filled with Harrison's voice, but not the confident professional tone he had just demonstrated. Instead, the recording played his words from our meeting 3 months earlier. "Alexander, this seems incredibly ambitious, maybe unrealistic. Our clients expect proven solutions, not experimental fantasies. Besides, artificial intelligence resource management, that sounds like something from a science fiction movie." The change in the room was immediate and dramatic. Every conversation stopped. Every face turned toward the speakers, then toward Harrison, then toward me. Harrison's face went through a range of expressions: confusion, recognition, panic, and finally, a desperate attempt to maintain composure. Chief Executive Officer Bradshaw looked between Harrison and me, his expression shifting from appreciation to suspicion. "What exactly are we listening to?" I stood up slowly, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "That recording was made on September 15th of last year, approximately 3 months ago. It documents a conversation between Harrison and me. where I presented this exact project concept to him as my manager. The silence that followed was absolute. 15 senior executives sat frozen, processing the implications of what they had just heard. Harrison opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. His face had turned pale, and small beads of sweat were visible on his forehead, despite the cool air conditioning. Chief Technology Officer Morrison was the first to recover. "Alexander, are you claiming that this project was your original concept?" "I am not claiming anything," I replied calmly. "I'm stating a fact that I can document comprehensively." I pulled out a thick folder I had prepared and placed it on the conference table. This contains 8 months of development documentation, including initial concept notes, technical specifications, prototype test results, and external expert consultations. All of it predates Harrison's arrival at this company. Chief Executive Officer Bradshaw leaned forward. "Harrison, what is your response to this?" Harrison finally found his voice, though it lacked the confidence he had displayed moments earlier. This is clearly a misunderstanding. Alexander and I collaborated on this project. We developed it together as a team effort. The recording is taken out of context." I reached for my phone again. "Would you like to hear more context?" "I have documented our conversations extensively." I played another segment where Harrison explicitly told me to focus on maintenance work while he handled strategic development of the concept I had presented to him. The room remained silent as the recording played. When it finished, I continued. "Harrison, in this recording, you clearly state that you will take my concept and develop it for presentation to the leadership team. You explicitly told me to focus on other work while you handled what you called strategic development." Harrison's composure was crumbling. "Look, in management, we often take ideas from our team members and help develop them. That is what leadership means. Alexander presented a rough concept, and I refined it into a viable business proposition." I opened my folder and distributed copies of my original documentation. "These are my initial project notes from March of last year, 6 months before Harrison joined our company. They include detailed technical specifications that Harrison just presented as his own work." Chief Executive Officer Bradshaw examined the documents while Chief Technology Officer Morrison cross-referenced them with Harrison's presentation slides. After several minutes, Morrison looked up with a grim expression. These documents appear to be identical to the technical specifications in Harrison's presentation, except they are dated months before his employment with our company. Harrison made one final attempt to salvage the situation. "Alexander could have backdated those documents. This could all be fabricated to undermine my position. We only have his word about when this work was actually completed." I smiled for the first time during the meeting. "Actually, Harrison, we have much more than my word." I pulled out another folder. These are email exchanges with external consultants, time-stamped server logs from my development work, and invoices for hardware purchases I made to build working prototypes. Everything is independently verifiable. I placed my laptop on the table and opened a complex software interface. This is a working demonstration of the dynamic resource optimization protocol, running on hardware I purchased and assembled in my home laboratory. The system has been operational for 4 months, processing real workloads and generating performance data. The executives watched as I demonstrated the system's capabilities, showing real-time resource allocation decisions and performance optimizations. Harrison stared at the screen with obvious recognition and growing despair. This was technology far beyond anything he could have developed, proof that the concept required deep technical expertise he simply did not possess. Chief Executive Officer Bradshaw closed the folders and looked directly at Harrison. Given the evidence presented, it appears that you have attempted to claim credit for work that was not your own. This represents a serious breach of professional ethics and company policy. Harrison tried one last desperate defense. Thomas, I can explain everything. This has been blown out of proportion. Alexander is making this seem much worse than it actually is. Harrison, Chief Technology Officer Morrison interrupted. You stood in front of this leadership team and explicitly claimed that you designed this project. You used the phrase, I designed this system, multiple times during your presentation. That was not a collaboration claim or a team effort description. That was a direct assertion of personal authorship. The meeting concluded with Harrison being escorted out by human resources, while the executives discussed next steps. Chief Executive Officer Bradshaw asked me to remain for additional questions about the project's development timeline and commercial potential. 3 weeks later, I was promoted to Senior Innovation Director, with a substantial salary increase and budget authority for advanced development projects. The Dynamic Resource Optimization Protocol became the foundation for a new product line that generated over $12 million in revenue during its first year. Harrison found employment with a smaller firm, though his reputation in the industry had been significantly damaged. Word travels quickly in technical circles, and the story of his failed presentation became something of a cautionary tale about the risks of claiming credit for others' work. As for me, I learned valuable lessons about documenting my work and protecting my intellectual property. I also learned that sometimes the best revenge is simply allowing people to reveal their true character to those who matter most. Harrison destroyed his own career by being exactly who he was, someone willing to steal others' work for personal advancement. The irony was not lost on me that Harrison's downfall came not from any elaborate scheme I had planned, but from his own arrogance and dishonesty. I had simply provided him with enough rope, and he had chosen to hang himself with it in front of the entire executive leadership team. Justice, I realized, sometimes requires nothing more than patience and careful documentation.